Would you know how to behave if a great person invited you into his presence, into his home, into his court? Would you know whether, let's see, can you speak first, or do you have to wait for them to speak? And what do you do going through the receiving line? And I mean, never mind if you're, like me and completely hopeless at learning how to walk in heels or something. What do you wear? How do you move? How do you talk? People need to know these questions because, of course, we are now entering the age of, is it the new monarchy? I don't know. We're going to find out. But we here on the Mosaic Ark will be ready for it. Welcome. I mean, can you believe what oh, we're on camera.
That's very uncouth.
Talking behind people's backs during the credits. We would never do that. No,
We're ladies.
no. Well, I know. I'm common as mud. This is I'm in my nanny og witch mode, right? Muck, common as muck, right? Muck.
As muck. Yeah.
I can't be any more common. I might have pretensions of, being a significant person in my small town, my grandparents' small town, because I was the granddaughter of the doctors. We had status in the town of 3 or 5 thousand. Remember the one that nearly burned down last year?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was watching my ancestral, demean be surrounded by fire. Indeed, I have great grandmother who owned land there, so maybe I actually count as
Are you a person of quality?
well, which quality, right?
Yeah. A person of quality, or a person of honor, or a common person, just a common person.
Well, I know from having met maybe I've met others and they were more, more reserved about declaring themselves, to be listed in Burke's, but
I don't know what Burke's is.
Oh, well, there you go. I know a little bit
That
more
tells
than
you what I am.
You're so common. You don't
I'm
even
so
know that
common.
you can't find out how
I
common you
know.
are.
Yeah, they don't have a word for my kind of common. It's just too common. Doesn't need one.
Well, I think Catholic starts here. We'll start with Catholic. No. Burke's peerage is, as I understand it. Now that this came up and I did not, I do this to myself, the improv, and then I'm suddenly desperately wanting to look everything up. Right? Some of us are finding that Grok is very polite, and if you're very
Can
like
be.
direct, have you ever seen Grok be rude? Maybe the
Yes.
robots are going to have to teach us how to behave now.
Yes. I can't remember who did it, but somebody asked a question about vaccines,
And
and
Grok was rude.
it
The
got
robots
very
are rude.
it got very snippy. It got very snippy. But
Snips.
I can't remember where I saw that, because I like surf with abandon usually. So go
Well,
wherever the wave takes
we should
me.
start like searching stuff and be completely rude and ignore our audience. The 5 of you that are here.
Yeah.
Okay. Rogue Wave, welcome. Thank you. The sound is good. Thank you for telling us. Robert, y'all are better than most. Let's see what you got. Well,
We're women of quality.
we
Well, we'll explain that in a minute.
we're women of quality. Anyway, I still haven't explained Burke's peerage, right?
Oh,
it's
sorry.
the list of the nobility in England, right?
Yes, I
And
would have absolutely no idea about that.
I've seen copies of it. It's usually bound in red, at least of the ones I've seen, and it's about, yay fit thick, right? So, and I think there's some thousands of people in it, but it's still like a very thin slice of the population. And
Mhm.
um, I if you read reading Elizabeth Nixon's Absurdistan stack, she often talks about having come from those levels of families, that not her family in
Ah,
Canada so much, but she knows what it's like to be trained as one of those families. And I think you're raised with certain manners.
mhm.
And there I am perfectly it's like so everyone knows, because I've talked about it endlessly, because I love bragging about how middle American I am. I grew up in the flyover country, middle of the country, with some pretensions of quality, right? It's like both
Mhm.
the educated part of the population, and the doctors and teachers and stuff. According to the nobility, that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. You have zero
Yeah.
status with them. Doctors and teachers, are you kidding me? I saw Bill Gates is clearly vibing this, a tweet that or not, maybe tweet, social media, something or other. He's saying, no, soon AI will be all the doctors and teachers, and they won't need any more human beings. And like, who are they gonna
Oh,
but who are they gonna take care of and teach? I mean, if the AI is doing everything and it's doctors, right?
is
AI
he
doesn't need
is
doctors. It's not alive.
I'm really biting my tongue right now. Mr.
Oh
Gates
no,
is not
we're still common as muck in this part. We are not behaving yet.
Mr. Gates is well, his intelligence is in question. We'll just leave it at that.
Right, but he's claiming the sort of sneering elite. I mean, his intelligence he's certainly not of the nobility. The money elite is never the same as he's not in the
Well,
peerage.
he
Frankly,
came he came he came from American elite before then. I mean, I think his father ran Planned Parenthood, and his
yeah.
mother
These
worked for
these
IBM.
Okay, but
It's
this
high up.
again. This just shows our commonness, right? That we care about
Yeah.
those things.
No, he this is what he thinks of himself. When you said he's sneering,
Mm.
it's because this is the atmosphere he was raised in,
Oh yeah.
to sneer at people beneath them,
Yes,
right?
which
And it
which
had,
which obviously pisses me off, because my family, as I've blogged about regularly, and said, we were of the part of the social strata that felt responsible for doing things like teaching and taking care of people's health.
mhm,
Right. So
right.
yeah, so we're clearly at odds. I mean, Bill Gates wants to wipe out my family's status and say, oh, robots could do all of that now. I mean, but like doctors and teachers, we won't need any people anymore. Well, then why will you need the robots doing any doctoring or teaching?
Well, we certainly
Like
won't need any more Bill Gateses anymore, will we? We don't need any now.
right. I mean, it's like, if we don't need any doctors, he's gonna now that the HHS, right, is coming in hard on these mandates and requirements and schedules and stuff. Can we say the word out loud and say, guess what, Mr. Gates? Who will you vaccinate if everyone's a robot? Good job. No money for
Yeah.
you. Um, okay, Caravaggio, yes. The AI will probably require psychotherapy, let's be honest. Yes, well, it'll just cycle with itself, right? Then it'll get crazier and crazier the more it talks to itself. And
Yeah.
then, and then the copies of the copies of the
Ooh,
copies.
there's another idea.
Just,
I'm
just,
getting
just,
horror story
just
ideas out of
close
this
it. Oh yes,
conversation.
well, we await. I was thinking, you said you only do your Halloween poem a year. We need to get you involved in some other months.
Well, it might take months because I found out that I can't really just fly by the seat of my pants or strictly plot out. I've got to do both, and that requires doing it way in advance. I'm
I've
learning a lot about
corrupted
writing.
you. I've corrupted you. We make outlines. We
We
do
do.
research. We ask Grok questions about things like, What was it yesterday? We need to know about 17th century fabrics. But
Oh yes,
Grok was very
that's right.
helpful on that.
Taffeta existed.
Taffeta
I was
existed. Who
surprised.
knew, right? And apparently
Yeah.
it's a kind of silk. I didn't know this. Why would I know
Nope.
this? I wear polyester. No, what do I wear?
No.
Some synthetics, right? It's
Yeah.
I'm clearly not dressed. So Yes, we do research, and it takes time. And now Casey is a real writer, which means plagued, plagued.
Plagued, plagued with sick attention to detail. It's a
The
sickness.
autism is stronger, is getting stronger in this one. Exactly. Okay, so what in our writing tonight, what we ended up in a debate for the last line of today's stanza over will or have. Like
Oh,
which
that's
which
true.
modal
Because it
verb should
matters.
this be? Because it matters, right?
It was
Or
a huge difference in
mm-hmm.
direction of the story. Just that one word, what either this word or that word takes you in completely different directions.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So the other thing we had to learn about, since we're we're writing, I'm sure you've guessed, because I'm sure all of you listen all the time, and are hanging on our every stanza creeping through, right? We've made it to stanza 11 in Act 2-4. Woo! Right? I also we did actually start the Mosaic Ark originally to promise you that we were still working on the poem. And so
Oh, yeah.
we'll give you regular updates. We're still working on the poem. We have our new artist, and she's done so much absolutely exquisitely beautiful work on Act 2.
So good at, yeah.
She because she's a real artist, and we do actually pay her. She also gets other things that she has to do. So she's been teaching some
Mhm.
classes, I think.
Mm.
Anyway, it's coming along. Don't worry. Academics can sustain very long-term projects and pull them off. Okay. But anyway, so we're working on Act 4, and Act 4 is set in the 17th century, which very much matters, and it's set, in sort of masked carnival um dance,
Mhm.
but to the point. And with this is of the, sort of thinking that you can force your characters to do what you want and puppet them around. We did have sort of thinking about puppeting some of the situation in this. They're puppeting us now.
It's true. It's true. They're speaking to us,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
audibly. Don't worry, but they definitely they've I've noticed definite characteristics showing themselves in starting in Act 2, and then it
Mm.
became much easier to write. Like I said, they were writing themselves because we'll write something. They go, no, 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 he wouldn't say that. He wouldn't. He just absolutely wouldn't say that.
Right.
That's not his character. So it becomes easier as it goes along, but then you start haggling over words like will or have, right? And then you get really particular.
Right.
Because the characters are so strong, the story takes over a little bit more because the characters are actually writing themselves.
How
Now,
rude. How
excuse
rude
me.
of them. Aren't we the creators here? Haven't we
Right.
created them? How could they be telling? This is I so I don't have as much experience. I mean, we've been doing this for going on 5 years now, so we have some, right? It's like in when I was started fencing, one of my friends who'd been fencing since he was in high school or middle school, probably called those of us who are just beginning like toddlers and stuff, right? So I'm actually in my early 20s as a fencer, and so we're out of toddlerdom in writing poetry. We're nearly five. Um,
Yes.
I don't have as much experience with the fictional characters, the ones that you've
Mhm.
invented for the purposes of a story, pushing me around. But I have no, I obviously have a lot of experience making sure that I'm voicing the text that I'm teaching. So,
Mhm.
if I have to be the voice of the past, it's, showing you how to in fact read. I can have all sorts of opinions about the text that I'm reading, and you know the character that it's showing and such like that. But my job as a teacher is to help students pay attention to the text and understand, let it push back on them. And that is that's the cool thing. It's like, if you really want to know what happens when you're doing historical research, if you listen to the sources enough, they start pushing back on you. And you have to have a curiosity to go ask the question, right? So we
Mhm.
have to ask Grok about fabrics, right? But the once you've asked, what you find starts having to work back on you and change how you think. What It's like really cool. It's like learning, which AI
Yeah.
apparently can't. I mean, AI thinks it can, but nobody, human beings project onto the large language models the experience of this, but they don't. It doesn't happen in the way it happens to us, which is somebody else has written something, and it speaks to you. Oh yes,
Right.
Footnote on the AI stuff, guys. Robots don't have souls. And you can
No.
tell when you're looking at the art that's made by the robots that it doesn't have this kind of voice, right? It's like weirdly enough, our fictional characters have more reality than the AI as characters.
If you want to test Grok out this way, to understand what Rachel just said, ask it if you have an X account. You can ask it to characterize you based upon your posts,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And it'll come right back and tell you everything about you. That because it'll just start taking from different sections that anywhere where you posted or replied or anything like that. It does the same thing with any question that you ask. It might tailor it to how many times that question's been asked, right?
It does seem to. It keeps a record in. It keeps threads of things, so you can ask it iterative questions to
Mhm.
build on stuff. Yeah, it's pretty good at that.
Yeah, I think we asked it once to, I'm trying to remember, it was a picture. We asked Grok to create a picture, an AI picture
Mm.
of you, and it showed you, oh gosh, what the heck was it?
Well, we were doing when we were illustrating the Grok poems, when we'd been playing with
It
the
was it was even
showing
before
Grok
that.
the poems. Okay.
It was, yeah, it was even before that. But anyway, it so because I asked the question about you, it developed a picture based upon posts that both she and I had done and interactions we had had and discussions we had had,
Mm-hmm.
and it started putting elements of our discussion in the portrait that it drew.
Like the pizza, it was set in a pizza restaurant, and that had been because I don't know, we somehow it had picked it sort of accumulates things that you've shown it, and
Yeah,
if it's still in that same, although I did, I mean, there's interesting ways in which it's clearly just roboting back, like um
yeah, true.
uh I think I didn't realize this. Like I said, can you tell me, who would I be like, right? And it says, I don't know who you are. And I'm like, oh, right. So in fact, you can be doing it from your own account, right? And it's like I have a premium account, so I can do little longer posts in X and
Mhm.
stuff. That unless you tell it I'm at such and such account, it doesn't actually automatically know, or at least they don't seem to have set it up that way. So it's interesting what you need to feed it in order for it to do its search, right? It's like these are fancy search
Mhm.
engines, guys, right? And it's like we're
Yeah,
really going to keep hammering on this because we're seeing too much projecting, people projecting themselves onto the idol. It's a mirror, and everybody wants you. It's like, what? Oh, okay. So I asked it. He's like, what? Celebrity am I like? And when people were doing the at Grok right game a few
yeah,
nights ago, and it's like,
yeah,
you're most like Milo Yiannopoulos, and I'm like, oh yes, score. I
yeah,
better be because it's like he's one of the ones that I interact with on Grok Whites
yeah.
on X. So like it should be tied there. It could be, I could have been tied with other people though. So that was interesting that it seems to
I tried it.
create patterns like that moderately accurately.
Yeah, it's not accurate with me at all, and here's why: because I don't actually post original thoughts a lot. I do it sometimes. I'll
You
usually
retweet, yeah.
I retweet things or I reply. I reply a lot to people. People don't even know sometimes. So just because they've had an interesting post or something like that. So
Right.
it didn't really know me very well because of that. So it said I was most like Elon Musk, and then it was conjecturing because of my sarcastic sense of humor that I will be like Sarah Silverman. I'm like, oh no, you couldn't be more wrong, Grok. I mean, maybe we have the same cadence when we talk, when we're like being sarcastic. And I've made a couple of sarcastic replies as a
Mm.
do sometimes. But yeah, that was strange. But
So this is an interesting metaphor for what we're trying to get to talk about
yeah,
tonight, which is the sort of behavior in different situations. Um, that one, this shows that, so like the robots can only find what's online.
yeah, yeah.
And so our faces and such are online. But interestingly, like Grok will generate images of me, which it's interesting seeing. They're better, for goodness sake, than the Bitmoji 3D avatar, for goodness sake.
Oh,
Oh
that
my
was so
gosh.
awful. Oh, why did
Ah,
they do
they're
that?
so
Why did
ugly.
they do that? They are. They're just.
It's the
It's
slot.
so
So this is the
thin.
iterative slot problem, right? We don't want to end up in the iterative slot problem where nobody's human anymore and knows how to and doesn't know how to behave. And the way in which the internet blends and molds and creates. I'm trying to figure out now in our theme, is it like an evil court? How is it? Because you thought you were like
Evil.
Elon Musk because you're retweeting it, but the robots can only see what we put online,
It said it was like
obviously.
it said it was like Elon Musk because I had a skepticism for authority or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It was something like that, but which makes a lot of sense if you know me,
Well, but that's fair. But
my previous career. So
this is the but yes, and you have good skepticism, and you understand why you should be skeptical.
yeah,
But I hadn't thought of this, but the degree to which people are, I mean, everybody's taking selfies with these robots right now, and saying, Grok, do you know me? What are my influence? I did this too because
tell me who I am.
yeah, tell me
Yeah.
who I am, right? And it's a mirror problem, right? Because you're looking in the
Hmm.
mirror and wanting it to know you, see me, see me,
Yeah.
see me. I want to be seen. I want to feel like I've been seen in
Oh,
this
that's kind of sad,
court
actually.
of what?
That's kind of sad, actually. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah. Oh,
Okay, well,
yeah.
I so maybe those of us who've been like published authors for a while have already done it, and it's embarrassing enough. Um, when your book first goes out on Amazon, I mean, this was, my first book came out a while ago. How many times do you check whether anybody's looking at it, whether
Oh, I would
anybody's,
check hourly.
oh my
For me,
gosh.
hourly every day for life, probably.
No, well, the thing is you get all excited because in your mind, right, you've been working on this work project. I mean, for me with my tenure book, right, it's like this thing that was going to change my life, which changed my life by not changing my life, that I stayed in the job that I had. Um, but you dream you dream of actually selling some books, right?
Yeah.
And Amazon, the sales rankings and stuff are just it's a pathetic, jealous little court kind of behavior to look over there and say, okay, well, my sales are in the million, but hers are at 5 million. Not rank, not actual numbers, right? It's like, and if you sell three, you drop down to 800,000, right? If you if you sell 10, maybe you make it at 300,000 for a bit, and then my best rank so far, I think, on that book was I was at 76,000 for a bit, or maybe you're like this is so pathetic, but so indeed, it's like all that this was back in 2001, right? So I know
Hmm.
I know what it's like to go look in the computer mirror and say, who am I? Show me, right? How
Hmm.
important am I relative to, and then you do this obsessive, like, um uh ranking, self-ranking against these other people,
Hmm.
and and then you choose. I mean, this is how pathetic academics are, and I know, guys, I know you've all done it because we all have, right? You you look up your rival. Oh, well, okay, we're about the same. Oh no, she sold more. Oh, ick. Okay, well, maybe she just had a good week, and she'll be back up at, and you're just like, this. It's clearly this kind of behavior actually matters in some way, but it's also what the toxicity of it is what Christ was trying to teach us to be aware of,
Oh,
right? If
yeah.
you're constantly figuring out what place at the table you're going to have,
Right.
right?
Or the guy at the front of the temple saying, thank you for not making me like that pathetic creature over there. Right.
Right. Oh, I'm so grateful I'm not
Yeah.
sitting at the seat of the table, or and you think I'm important. I'm going to go sit up at the front of the table, and then the host says, "No, no, no, you're in the wrong seat. You have to sit down there, and this person gets to sit there." And then you
Right.
just
Yeah. Do the walk
right.
of shame to the end of the table. Right.
And it's kind of fascinating that we do this to ourselves, right? It's like the talk about things that are hardwired, if you want to use a mechanical metaphor for us, like the the problem of envy and jealousy, and the sort of chronic testing of ourselves against, like, and this we've talked about this with the female hierarchy stuff, right? Every single a you know 5 women walk into the room, they've all ranked themselves against each other instantly.
Yeah.
I wonder whether there's a limit. Like, how many women in a room do you need in order to know exactly what your rank is against all of them? About 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Maybe 3
And it,
seconds. I don't
and it
know.
doesn't even matter because when they walk in, they will immediately split people, and people will usually split themselves off, and they'll group
Hmm.
themselves together already, and then they'll seek out the group that they think they're going to compete against, and then they will rank that group. The rest of them don't matter.
Oh, yes. Yes. We're in
Yeah.
this group, right? And then,
Yeah.
yes.
That's strange how naturally I came up with that just on the spot.
I wonder
It's like I've
why.
been in a situation before.
How would you know that?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Just any place there are women gather ever, like every day for
Well,
all
apparently,
eternity.
I mean, apparently men rank themselves off of, I saw, oh golly, what's the, is Ryan Long? Is the comedian's name?
Comedian? Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a little short I saw this morning where they're playing that Ryan and another friend are comforting their fat friend who is his girlfriend is or his wife has left him, it was like whichever, his woman has left him because he's broke, right?
Uh-huh.
And the caption, the title is like, if men gassed each other like women gas them, you're right. Oh no, it's not that you're broke, it's just she's. Well, and they end up thinking it's like, well, we'll put you on the cover of Billionaire magazine. We should have homeless people on the cover of Billionaire magazine because they're just being hateful, right? And the
Yeah.
guy is just like, but I'm broke, I have no money, and they're like, oh no, you need, she's just using that hateful, it's like, and obviously they're skidding the, he's broken up with me because I'm fat, or he's broken up with me because I'm
Yeah.
ugly, right? And so, oh no, girlfriend, you're beautiful. And i
Yeah.
have i have thought about that. It's like the men are claim that they need to then, I mean, his premise being, I need to make some money. She really broke up with me because I'm broke. It's not,
Yeah.
she's right, right? But with us, with our ladies, right? It's like we know what we need to do, but it also is this sort of mirror effect, right? It's like, I need to be seen, and if I don't know, if the women all lie to you, oh no, your sales are good, oh well, that's a really, they're all lying to you because they're all
Yeah.
they're secretly happy that that your
Oh,
sales
that's
rank is
you.
worse than theirs, right? Or that
That's dark.
oh my gosh. Robert says Jay Dyer has been arguing with Grok. It's really funny. Well, I'm glad. We just like Grok is a search engine. We are not like
It's a
having
great
love
search
affairs with.
engine.
It's a
It's
great search engine.
fast.
It responds with snark if you give it. It uses language like you. Yes, I did test it at one point based on, it's like, can you tell from the way I've been asking, when I've been talking to you, whether I'm a man or a woman? And
Yeah.
uh I because you know I'm not that inclined to like talk friendly to them, the robots, because they're robots, right? I was like, it's like I can, typing in Google, please, could you help me find something? It's like,
Okay, now
no,
I want to
that's
say
dumb.
we were when we were talking to Bob Cruzy, you were talking about Sasha, the robot.
Because he's so brilliantly
He's
showing how ridiculous it is to be sympathetic to her. She's a
right.
robot.
But you were expressing sympathy, like, but you're so mean. He's so mean to her. Why is he so mean to
No,
her?
I was joking. No, because
Okay.
no, the thing is, I think this is why I think Rob's books are so brilliant, because he made her the narrator of these stories, and then
Yeah, it's
has
great.
Rex be dreadful to her, and it's a trick, right? Because and that they're funny, they're satire. So
They're
you're
very,
so
very
and
funny.
so he's sucking you in to feel sorry for her when she's a robot, right? Rex is actually right. Right?
But she seems to have she see but he yeah, she seems he does a really good job of giving her like a human personality.
Right. No,
Yeah,
Rob is a really, really great writer. That's the
he
thing,
is.
right?
Yeah.
And he's written this robot that you start feeling, you feel sorry for. But Rex is like, refusing to fix her, and, oh, well, we'll take your arm and stuff like that.
Or seller.
Or sell her. Or, you know, it's like, she's not even she, right? It's an it. and and
Yeah,
and and Rob, because he is, theologically profound, gets it, right? And that's
yeah.
why he's actually created that character, to make this point. That
But it makes the point
you
with
can't
Rex
make
too, because Rex is
Rex
so
is,
boorish.
yeah, so, but he's boorish just to
Yeah.
her, and he's boorish to
Yeah, he's
Sasha.
boorish to everybody.
Mm, yeah, pretty much, but he's worse to the robot, but it's a
Yes.
robot, right? And so it's like, okay, so he beats up his car, I think the best thing I've seen about this is saying, and now I don't remember who pointed it out. We've had cars for 100 years now. We don't think they're alive, right?
We named them.
Yeah, well, you name your houses and ships and stuff too. You don't think they're alive.
People have, they don't think they're alive, but they have an affection for them as if they were a person, as if they were a person sometimes.
So we are really good at personification
Mhm.
and projection on, and this is I suppose so. Our theme tonight is social behavior. And we're discovering
Appropriate.
the complexity of this problem, right? It's like we end up in social relations with things and objects and places, and we do
Robot
have
etiquette, it's coming.
what
Robot etiquette, it's coming.
robot. Well, I mean, this is kind of the problem, right? It's like, okay, so one, we're not court people, we're commoners. We are human, and the robots are not human. I mean, I think it'd be like, if your house was completely computerized, would you, think the house was alive? They'd be haunted if you
Yeah.
had that, so we project onto it and think the house is haunted, or, horror movies are all about the toys coming to life.
Yes, Alexa.
Yeah. Anyway, we're getting a little off topic here. Rogue Wave says, I'm currently using DeepSeek for some research. I just had to correct it on some details of two early medieval saints I apparently thought were one person. Well, to be fair to DeepSeek, that's a common problem.
That is,
on,
yeah.
whether or not we're dealing with one or two people. Is Dionysius, the Areopagite, the same as Saint Denis? Abelard got thrown out of the monastery for saying they were different. So
Oh,
Abelard's 1,000 years ahead of DeepSeek and getting these disentangled. Anyway, I forgot. We've started so many rabbits here. Let's see, which one was it? Okay, so we have been thinking about court culture, which we are now proving is relevant to everything that we do right now. And I think I
mhm.
realized what the sort of, this wasn't where we thought this would go, but people are really nasty to each other, and we need to know how to behave. And there's various levels of that, like, we're writing this court scene, and the characters, because it's finally, the point where they all have to have a fight, because that's dramatic, and you know people, stories are boring for human beings. Actually, this is interesting. Human beings like stories where people do bad things to each other,
It's true.
like
Why are
Rex
we
and
like that?
Sasha, but Sasha's a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is drama? I mean, what is comedy? It's people, all of it, all of the above. It's people doing bad things to each other. I
Or
mean,
behaving badly or behaving, boorishly or embarrassingly, and yeah.
boorishly, embarrassingly. We get no, I mean, a story in which everyone's simply having tea and very polite is dull, right? Hmm.
Can be, or it can be a fight also. Well, it doesn't look like it.
Well, no, but the essential dramatic element for us as writers, that so you have to put your characters in danger, right? You can't you that
Mhm.
you can't, simply be nice to them and keep them out of
In, well, in conflict, yeah.
any bad things happening, because what we are drawn to in stories is conflict,
Mhm.
and we create it for ourselves constantly. The primary conflict being status over status. I mean, men and women both do it differently, for sure. Men, fight each other physically. Women don't include each other in their tea parties. Um,
We tease each other until we get eating disorders. Yeah.
but I mean, both of these things are status. They're status competitions,
Mhm.
right? And thinking about it, um, you know, the gripping literature that we all Shakespeare plays are all about status inversions and challenges and loss, and the comedies
Mhm.
are ones that end well for everybody, and the tragedies are ones that end badly. But they're still, I mean, they're sort of, people are fascinated by them because they feel like they come out of the Elizabethan court for sure, which they did. But they're tests of behavior in these, very uh tightly balanced situation. So Titania is made into a buffoon because she falls in love with Bottom, with an ass's head, right?
Mm.
That Oberlin has to, make her humiliated because she falls in love with a monster. Um, that Gee, we seem to be like super duper sensitive to this, and if we're um, and yet Christ says we should not do it.
Right. Christ, I mean, this is mentioned by Christ 2,000 years ago about status. We were talking that right before we went live here, about sending people to the end of the table. Don't try to sit at the top of the table in case you get embarrassed and get sent to the end of the table.
Right, right.
People, right? People in the Middle Ages, people in the Renaissance, they would understand that because that was still a thing. It's still somewhat of a thing today, but it's not. Is it as nearly as important in the same way? Or the status
Well, you could
expressed
say
differently?
this is why everyone's going crazy,
You could, because nobody knows how to act.
because
People have been saying
nobody
that for
knows how
30,
to
40
act.
years, though.
Nobody knows how to act. Okay. Okay, let's cut to the chase here. We did some research. And after we asked Grok about the fabrics, then we realized that, okay, what they're wearing is important because you have to have some description and get people in the mood and stuff like that. But what was even more important was we'd have our main characters dancing, and then we're trying to figure out, okay, what now happens? And then we realized we didn't know really, because we started imagining, it's like, well, if it's a, celebrity couple in a dance now, you'd end up with the paparazzi all around them or something like that. But in the 17th century, that's not allowed, right? You're not
Right.
going to, be in court at all unless you're in the peerage, right? If you're in burghs.
Mhm.
We're so used in our common as muck situation of being able to like barge in everywhere, and I'm American. Well, I'm American. I belong
I'm a,
here.
I'm a celebrity. Yeah.
Well, okay. So these, I mean, these different layers of like putting yourselves on which seat of the table you're going to take. I'm a
Yeah.
celebrity. But also that, I mean, one of the things, guys, if you cannot be an American if you're caught up on the wrong kind of status, right? Because we rejected that, English nobility. But oh my goodness, if you don't
We,
know
we
your
reject,
place, you're
we
in
rejected the titles. We did not reject all of the stuff that came along with it.
not in the slightest, right?
Nuh-uh.
And so here we are, we're here, and we've done Mosaic Ark. We did, Kilt and I did some chats on this, maybe our first year, right? And I think we
Mhm.
keep coming back to etiquette and behavior and manners, and it's clearly,
Fodder for drama.
it's, well, yes, it's the absolutely, it's everything. uh, Drama all comes out of breaking the rules of social behavior
Hmm.
completely. And uh yeah, I think, the pretense of being able to carry a different social status because of your behavior, but oh no, you have to be trained like that as a child in order to behave convincingly. But in fact, what if you could? Yeah. Well, anyway, we figured we had to look it up, and we asked Grok, how do we learn how to behave well in the 17th century? And it gave us some references.
It did.
And so
Good
we, in
ones.
fact, we've done some research. We've done some research because we all know, here we go. We all know you guys want to go to this place, the
The
court, right?
court. The court
The
of the
court.
day.
The court of the, no, it's not the White House, it's Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
Although, the etiquette of going to the White House, that, okay, that'd be interesting. It's like, what's the etiquette of going to the White House? Because the reporters are all amazingly rude, right? They still haven't learned how to behave properly as if they are talking to the king, right?
Yeah.
But Mar-a-Lago it's Trump's own house, right?
Hmm.
And two, it's like the well, do it looks here. Let's go inside. Here we go. Here's the doors, right? Would you know how to behave if you got to go inside?
If you did not know how to behave when you walked into a place that looked like that, you would immediately, your spine would stiffen up a little bit. It's very formal looking.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. It was built to impress. It was built to show off wealth in 1928. I think Merriweather Post
Mm-hmm.
owned it. I forget her first name. Anyway, but
Mrs.
yes, it was
Post.
Mrs. Merriweather Post, right? And yes, she along with a lot of industrialists and newspaper magnates built these incredibly impressive houses.
Mm-hmm.
Now Trump bought this back in the late 1980s, I think, because he thought it was beautiful and he fixed it up and he wanted it to be saved. He's a real estate guy. He
Right.
knows quality when he sees it, and he bought this place. And it is stunning. It's stunning. So if you did not know how to act, if you were invited into a place like this, and it is somebody's personal private home, but it's enormous, it's a palace, it might cross your mind that I should be acting in a certain way here. And you might check yourself, as they say, and just try to act a little bit more subdued. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody would have this reaction unless they were completely clueless, and I don't think most people are.
Well, I guess this gets to our kind of our sacred theme that we never finished on with the categories, right? It's like there's certain places that you're supposed to behave in particular ways, and
Right.
and that you know formal behavior is recognizing a certain. It's not just, I mean, so well, this is where people think it's, oh well, this is just money, right? And you said this, like, these are wealthy people. They're not in the peerage, right? They don't belong to that. The interesting thing about the peerage as a social status is it's, I mean, the people that belong to it, they said they can't lose it, right? If you're born in, I mean,
Right.
you could lose all your property and things like that, but you could be very poor and still of the nobility, so you could have
Mm-hmm.
that permanent status. Whereas wealth, it's like it's a fungible status. You could get more of it, and then you get to be the guy with the big house. But of course, there's always that sense of, oh, but you're still not real.
Right. Well, what's interesting about Mar-a-Lago is that it was just a rich guy's house before
Mm-hmm.
before its owner became president, and now it's a place of prominence. It's a place of additional importance,
Mm-hmm.
or just primary importance, right? Because like the money is secondary. Even his accomplishments would be secondary next to being, the leader of the United States of America at this particular time. It's important. It
Right.
means something. And so now that place takes on a different meaning, and it'll never lose it so long as it's standing. It'll be the President 45 and 47, 45, 47's residence. It would be the Southern White House, which is what people are calling it right
Oh,
now.
really?
Yes.
So I can report from this neighborhood that there's still Secret Service around the Obama house, um,
Hmm.
but it doesn't have any aura around it. It's got some signs saying you can't
Yeah.
go here, and it's still got some barriers on the road, so you can't get close to it or anything. But it
Hmm.
it it has no glamour right now. It's very interesting.
Did it have glamour while he was president?
It had a lot of guards around it. You couldn't drive down that block. You couldn't walk down that block.
Yeah. That's for security, and that's appropriate. But glamour is way different
Right.
than
But it
security.
certainly it doesn't have that.
Yeah, it'll always be an important place because of its former resident, but it won't be the same thing as being a glamorous place. There is a difference. I mean, there is a reason these palaces were built in the 1920s. People were showing off their wealth.
Right.
It was very ostentatious. It was very it was very tasteful. Can you be tasteful and ostentatious? Yes, you can. It would be, see, the thing is, it's ostentatious for an American because they were trying to copy
Right.
European palaces of Italy and of France. Right. In the case of the Biltmore estate, it looks a lot like you would be mistaken for it being somewhere in the Loire Valley by
Mhm.
looking at it from a distance.
Mhm.
If you take your boat up to Mar-a-Lago or up to Vizcaya, you would be forgiven for thinking you were floating into Venice, into one of the palaces, because that's why they built it, to look like that, to approach it from the water. And in one of their cases, it actually, I don't know if I included that one. One of them actually looked like St. Mark's Square. That
Wow.
might have been the one in Sarasota that P.T. Barnum built in the same era in the 1920s.
Mhm.
But yeah, they were glamorous, but they were using, classic design elements of European palaces when they built them, which to an American looks way overdone, right?
Yes.
But we still appreciate them. They're still beautiful to look at.
Well, okay, so this, I mean, this, a lot of people talk a lot now about, it's like we need to, reclaim the West, right? We need to recover the West. And I do, I mean, this has been interesting trying to write this 17th, it's sort of 17th, 18th century, because we can't always find all the right period stuff to fit our characters. We had to learn how they danced the minuet, which was
That was
interesting.
fun.
But to say we're actually trying to imagine the Ancien regime and
Hmm.
its tensions, and it's also, I mean, the 17th century, it's like if you want to know why, short history version of things, if you want to know why we're in the situation we are right now, it's the Enlightenment, but it's the Enlightenment. um I guess it's rejecting the Middle Ages, but massive things happen in the 17th century with, power and flow of money and such. The reason that they're able to build Versailles is France is incredibly rich.
Hmm.
The reason they're able to build the Hall of Mirrors is because, Louis manages to, steal the craft secrets of the glass blowers from Venice, and that they are, that I when people think of what, great, you said this, like, we're Americans, and so we don't, we're commoners, right? We can't
Hmm.
it just feels like pretentious and silly to have a big fancy gold house, doesn't
Right,
it?
and this isn't just a humble brag either, because that can be kind of snobby too in the other direction.
Oh,
Well, you don't
definitely,
do that kind of thing.
definitely.
We're much more calm about things like this, common sense. No, it's just
I
not in
don't
our
need no
character to.
fancy house. Yeah.
I don't need no, yeah, no fancy house, no fancy book learning. Yeah, no,
Or book
we love
learning
fancy
too, yeah.
houses. We love fancy houses and fancy book learning, but it's not something that would be common in even a very wealthy American's house. So these ones did stand out, and they were built to stand out, right?
Right. But they're
American
still, I mean,
royalty,
they're sort
American
of
house,
private.
maybe.
So Versailles or something like that. I mean, that was his home, but it was meant to be a place where the nobility are commanded
Would
to
meet, right?
attend, right? And
And the industrialists too. They would bring people in for these big
fair,
meetings,
yeah.
for sure. And so it was kind of like a court. You're right. It was an alternative court. Very untypical for Americans, though, and it is notable that these were all built in about a 40-year period in American history.
Well,
These
so
types of
as we're
palaces.
talking about it, these palace houses are built at the same time all the college campuses that are like mine in the collegiate Gothic style. So we're building, palatial homes and,
Yes.
you know, castle monastery like college campuses in the same 1880s to 1920s.
You probably had a lot of craftsmen coming over from Europe at that time. There was a large immigration wave from Eastern Europe
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Yeah, the pole, like St. John Cantius that we show in our credits, right? That's
Hmm.
built in around 1900 and by Poles.
Yeah.
Who come over with those skills, and they're building a lot of the
Hmm.
city, and so you have all of this magnificence. But it's when people think about Europe or think about the West, I mean, some part of me, it's like nobody says this out loud because they're always saying about values or it's about this, that, or the other. But some part of me feels like it's this haunting of the period before it all became common as muck. With the Enlightenment, it's
Hmm.
all going to be rational, and before the revolution makes all of us, socialists, and before, we're all dressing like English stock market traders or something like that. That there was a Europe that used to enjoy beautiful things, and used
Yes.
to enjoy, but the problem being, of course, these palaces are like these homes that we're looking at in our
Hmm.
slides. I've just got the doors at Mar-a-Lago still. We're not public in the same way the churches are. They're only
Right.
they're places you can only go if you are in the Burke's peerage, or in the right
Or a
set,
servant.
and or a servant. Yes, there's a lot of
Yeah.
servants.
They had a lot of
Something
servants, so they could see it.
some like 10,000 people at Versailles. It's a little town, medium-sized
Yeah.
town, 5 to 10,000 people at Versailles. So it's like, yeah, it's fair enough. You have all of the quality, not the quality. That's a more 19th century term. You have all of the great persons. They're the great persons. and their staff. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The great, great persons, honorable persons and quality persons. That was really interesting reading that,
great, honorable, and
and quality.
yeah. Okay, so what I thought we were going to talk about was just how to behave, and Casey's been doing some reading, and she's gonna tell us, because Grok helped us find an old book. All of the
Very
best
old
stuff,
book.
all the best stuff comes out of the old books. Uh, but the what I'm recognizing is, of course, the reason manners matter so much is it's the core of everything we are socially. And the problems that we're having right now online, which we've talked about, but in daily life, is literally nobody knows how to behave. And that, I mean, saying the problem with the massive mixing of populations with the immigration is, to a large extent, it's not just the sexual behavior and whether or not you can murder and kill, steal from each other and stuff. Simple day-to-day interactions of what kind of courtesies people should
Yeah.
practice. I still, it's like, I still find it very, very easy talking to a lot of people in South Side of Chicago, because they all came from the South, and so I know what they're doing. I know the sort of civil gestures of civility,
Hmm.
and these seem to matter a lot. So what did we learn? What did we learn from this book? It's like, here we are. We've gone through the doors. We're here in the drawing room, or the room with the couches. Do we know how to
Hey,
behave now? What did you learn? What?
what do we do? Well, yeah, there was a section of this very
So
old book.
what's this very old book you found?
Well, you found it.
Grok
But
found it. And I just,
um,
okay, look, I'm just, like, obsessed enough with this. I knew when I looked at the list that Grok gave us, this one was the good one because it's the primary source. And happily, because the internet is, filled with digital scans of everything,
yeah.
we were able to look up various editions of it. I also could tell that it was important because Grok also suggested one of Norbert Elias's books. Norbert Elias is a sociologist writing in the early 20th century. His books are a
Mhm.
little harder to read than this one, because they're sort of sociologically. But
Okay.
this is one of the primary sources he uses, so it's actually pretty cool as a book.
Yeah,
But
it's a book about manners, that was written in Italy first,
no,
by
no, no.
Jesuits.
I confused you. I confused you.
Oh,
The
you
book, the
did?
book you found. What's the title of it in the edition that we found? It's a great title.
Okay, I will pull it up. Courting, hold on.
Curtin
Okay,
is the art. Is
the
well.
rules of civility, or certain ways of deportment observed in France among all persons of quality upon several occasions.
There you
Okay.
go. And the thing is, okay, so
Different
it has a known
situations.
author now, but the confusing part is there's no author on the title page, right?
No, there's no author on
There,
that
it's
page.
just these are the rules. The,
These are the
these are the
rules. There's a book
rules.
of that name, wasn't there?
No, it's not, because it was published anonymously, right? And
Yeah.
and and I was, if you look at the way it was sort of, they're sort of like, iPhone sized, right? I have the feeling that these are little, they're little pamphlets that you're
Right.
supposed to
There are
carry
notebooks
around.
that you can, that's right. You can carry around because it was there was a shocking amount of detail in this book. And let's see, how many pages was it? 156 pages, which isn't a lot, but it's written in very archaic English. We had the translation from the French from the 17th century. And there are different situations. I The three I picked because they had to do with what we were writing was greeting, dining, and dancing.
Oh, okay, well, you saved us. We're gonna know how to behave when we show up
You would
at
think.
Mar-a-Lago.
When
Well,
you Well, yeah, they did just say that if you're the guest of a person of quality, it matters who you're a guest of. I
oh,
think that's
okay.
most important because whether you're greeting somebody or you're dining with them, or you greet them on the street or you greet them in their house or you're a guest in their house,
Hmm.
it first depends upon who the person is you're meeting, seeing, or being invited by, because you act differently. You're not to act as a peer if you're not a peer, and that's important. And the closest thing I can come to closest thing I can come to comparing this to is if you were young and you were never taught, or you were taught to never address an adult by their first name,
Mm-hmm.
which is the way I was raised.
Yes.
And a shocking amount of people are not raised that way these days.
Nobody
And
is. I mean,
there are some
I
very,
even know that that's how we grew up, and I didn't. I don't think my son's friends. I'm not sure whether they knew how to talk to me when they were kids, right? It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I've been asked by precisely one child in the past 20 years, how may I address you?
Hmm.
And I was shocked. And I said, well, you may call me, Mrs. Grilly. Thank you very much. She says, okay. But every other child that would just try to call me by my first name, and I would correct them. My niece and nephews tried it too. I corrected them. But then I met people my own age who said, oh, I don't like being called auntie. It makes me feel old. It's like, okay, there's a couple of things going on here.
Mm.
Um, First of all, you're, there, there's a lack of distinction between age groups, between children and adults, and that's actually very dangerous for children. They
Yes.
should never
So
see
it's
adults
like
as peers.
we would not be having a lot of the problems we're having right now if that was held.
Yeah,
Right.
that's very important that they understand that adults are not their peers, because then an
Right.
adult can't pretend to be their peer, right, and take advantage of them. And I mean, it goes the other way too. You're having a lack of respect for people who are older than you. That can also cause its own problems depending on the situation, like teachers, right? Police officers, right? If everybody's the same, why should I treat you with any deference at all,
Yeah.
even if it's your job? This causes all kinds of problems that can be avoided if you just have children address adults by their last name. Then they understand there's a difference socially.
Mm-hmm.
So in this book, you would address people differently depending upon their status. So if you were going to walk into Mar-a-Lago and be greeted by the President of the United States, you should call him Sir or Mr. President.
Mm-hmm.
That's Is there a book written about this? No, but there should be, because people have forgotten. And maybe that's why this book was written, because there were so many different situations that people found themselves in that they needed help. And I think people need help today too.
Yep.
I think they really do, because they've forgotten why we have these rules. It isn't to kill your fun, and it isn't to allow some people to think they're better than you. It's not better. It's different, and different. There's nothing wrong with difference. There are
Well, I mean, the
differences.
difference is this is what's interesting. It's like we were, sort of performing the problem at the beginning. Everybody is constantly status sensitive, constantly. There is
Mm,
no. This is the irony of something like communism. I I was in a conversation yesterday and was saying communism is trying to be monasticism without God, which just remember that, right? It's like communism is a Christian heresy. It's this claim of, community of work and things like
yeah,
that. But the other thing it's trying to be is monasticism without the actual hierarchy of the monastery,
I was
which
thinking
is with
that.
an abbot and the officers of the monastery, and the
Hmm.
monks were all they would go in and out of choir in ranked order, and they were ordered by their time of entry into the monastery, which
Hmm.
created interesting situations because, like, maybe boys that grew up in the monastery would be ahead of men who had
Yeah,
entered more recently but as adults or something like that. But the status in your community was marked by everything
right.
that you did.
The,
And
one- the yeah, the one place that still exists in
yeah.
secular world is in the military,
Mhm.
right? Because you'll have some, 38-year-old sergeant who has to salute a 22-year-old second lieutenant who just came out of West Point,
Mhm.
you know? And it's like, well, yeah, you're saluting the rank, not the man. But you have to constantly tell people this, because it looks strange. Because outside of military, you have a younger man and an older man. Maybe they lived in the same neighborhood. He had to call him Mr. So and so.
Right.
Now suddenly he's being saluted. You know?
Well, that's okay, but this is
Yeah,
the I again, I think a lot of so spoiler alert, what people say that they're missing when they want to recover the West, a lot of it's this. It's simply
could
these
be.
rules of behavior.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so vague when people are saying, well, it's the old days. It's like, what about them, right? And the what about them was, people had. I mean, it's interesting that we were looking at this because we had our characters dancing, and the dance, a minuet, is we learned very, very formal and restrained and incredibly sexy because it's so formal and restrained. But it's a
Right.
court dance, and the court. I mean, this is what the court. So okay, footnote and explain why Mar-a-Lago and Versailles and such are important here. The thing that Norbert Elias, the impossible to read sociologist who was studying these handbooks, realized was it was training in manners like this that created the. I mean, in his version of things, it's the modern state, right? It's a sort of behavior behind the organization of society that makes the sort of state function, and it
Mm.
fits with the man who wrote this, Courtin. I've forgotten his first. He had been a diplomat. He'd been a diplomat in Sweden. He'd been a diplomat for France and England, and he retired and wrote a number of these little handbooks for people on how to behave, using, as you were pointing out, some older treatises. But
Hmm.
the the sort of sense that we have of what things used to be like the old days, I think it was simply these recognitions of status and courtliness in the sense of civility,
Right.
like civilizing, right? And that's what Elias calls his primary books, the civilizing process. It's this: how do you learn to be civilized? Well, you learn to behave,
Yeah.
which includes recognizing things like there is an implicit status in every single interaction you're in, and you need
Hmm.
to know it. And if you are constantly thwarting it, you're rude.
Right. And some people take pride in being not, they don't see it, I don't think it is rude, or they think it's funny if somebody calls them rude. They take pride in flaunting convention. There are no conventions anymore. Well, none that are acknowledged. They still exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to thwart convention, right? And then brag about how bold you are. But that's a personality type too. That's definitely linked to Instagram famous people.
Mm.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, so there's all these hierarchies. I obviously the other big thing that's happening is with the reorganization of the administrative state, they're losing
yeah.
their status.
Yeah, that part was actually hilarious. Somebody was saying they didn't like these 20-year-old kids from Doge coming in, and
Yes, they're
they
so
they
mad
lack
about that.
they lack the sophistication necessary to be a high-ranking person in the government. To which I just busted a gut laughing, having met quite a few of these people before, and it's like, oh no, no, they need to be there. You know,
But
need to be
realizing that most
reminded
of
that
most of what
you're
I'm seeing, I mean, both in academia and online as part of the responses, they're just so crude, right? And it's the
yeah.
feeling of you let these people in and they're just pooing on the
How
furniture,
dare
right?
you? How
How
dare
dare
you? Right?
you?
Yeah.
When of course we, as there are collections of photos of showing things that were happening there before with the previous administration, and oh well, that's not rude, that's liberating, right? Or it's
Exactly.
edgy, and such, like we're all reacting to the problem of proper behavior,
Yes. What about standards and norms? This is what they screamed at Trump
right?
24 hours a day during his first administration. Standards and norms. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We're not talking about protocol in a state dinner here. We're talking about actually governing and passing laws and trying to direct the country, which you were elected to do. It's it's
Yeah,
it's,
but
it's
most
crazy. And
most of what
maybe
they're saying is, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it too fast. You're not behaving.
you're
I mean,
doing it you're doing it at all, and you're
well,
not deferring
yes.
to us because we're the experts. No, the expert class is a whole nother layer that has tried to inject itself onto society, and society is having none of it anymore
but
because it's
but they're but
self-appointed.
but they're yes, but think about their I mean, I live among them in my lowly status of teacher, right? And I certainly, I've been in situations even in academia where I'm allegedly high ranking because I'm faculty or something like that, but I've been surrounded by other people who are definitely, they definitely know that I'm dirt, right? And I'm like, okay, fine,
Mm,
I'm common as muck, whatever. But which is like, I get it, like I'm no good, I have no sense of nobility in that way at all, of contact with power, right? I've been around people that had, like, contact with power, and you feel that all of
mm,
these sorts of buildings and places and behaviors. I mean, Curtin, when he's writing about these rules of civility, you just said it, right? You listed off the kind of persons that he says,
mhm.
when you meet someone, you should be aware of all of these distinctions, and you
Yes.
and you have to, what can you tell us the specifics on what he said? You have to adjust your greeting based on your relationship
Okay.
and status with this person. And it's not just children saying Mr. and Mrs. The best thing,
No, that was,
that
yeah,
happens when I go to the South now is, the young people call me ma'am, especially the
ma'am,
young men. I
ma'am.
love that. Yes, ma'am. And I'm like, yes, nice young man.
Yeah. This is why when I got older and people started calling me ma'am, it didn't bother me because I grew up on army bases, and I've been called ma'am since I was 13 years old. So by very polite young soldiers,
Yes,
pass you
yes,
on the
ma'am.
street. So
You're like,
excuse me,
you were
ma'am, yes,
raised
ma'am.
right.
Yeah. Yes, and they weren't all Southerners either, which is odd. At that time the army just drilled it into them that you treat people respectfully,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, let's see. So this is again very archaic language. They talk about noblemen, which Americans wouldn't get because we're not British.
Well,
But
but we
just
fantasize
imagine,
about we and that's the problem. It's like, so
we
actually
LARP.
we also we found a the our actors are allegedly are they're not nobility, right? That's the problem. They're still just
No.
actors, and actors had no status whatsoever in the ancien
Oh,
regime.
they had
They had
negative
negative
status
status, right?
up until very recently.
And the thing is, to in a weird way they kind of still do, because they're I just now thinking about this, it's the only reason they're able to be mobbed by the sort of media in the way that they are now, because they're actually
Mhm.
characters, they're not themselves important.
Yeah. Okay. Could you say the same thing about a nobleman who's famous?
Oh, well,
Were
Prince
they
Harry
embodying the
leaps
character?
to mind, or Mr. Sussex. um
Mr. Merkel. Yeah.
No, the thing is, this is what's interesting about it. It's like, if you're raised as nobility, like this one person I'm thinking of was, they feel themselves different, and it doesn't go away. It's not about whether or not you're the center
Mhm.
of the attention or something like that. I mean,
Mhm.
I actually have met no I've met well, I don't know, life peers are the same. The ones that come from the families that, you grow up with this feeling of it, what you and I
Yeah.
were saying, it's like the children who are taught to call Mr. and Mrs. Even deeper than that, right? It's like you know that you are somebody in this particular way, and that has nothing to do with the glamour around it.
No, no, it's. I can only imagine it would be it had to be a family tradition, right? That they raised their
Right.
children the way they were raised this way. But yeah, I can't relate to that at all. But I'll read this because it's a good example of in three and a half very short paragraphs of how many different ways there were to address people and meet them in
Hmm.
different situations. That's what this book was like. So if you be to go and come in the presence of persons of quality, you must endeavor to pass always behind them. If occasion offers to walk with a nobleman in the street, we must give him the wall, and remember not to keep up directly by his side, but a little behind, unless he speaks to us and expects our answer. And then we must be sure to be uncovered. That means, I guess, up in front. So
No,
give him
uncovered
the
means
wall.
your hat is off.
Oh, I see. Okay. Did they always wear hats? Maybe they did.
Yes, they always wore hats.
Yeah.
But you
So
take your hat off around these people.
he
So
gets to walk in towards the wall. And I'm guessing that's because people threw things out the window
it's so you don't get splashed on the street.
or don't get
And
splashed
I'll
on the
say that
street. Yeah.
the one person there are a few older British people that know this. And when I was in Cambridge, my teacher, my supervisor, would it was so interesting. He was very polite and would always make sure he was walking on the outside. So
Oh,
it get
wow. Nice.
you get kid so this is where women used to be treated like nobility, right? Which is the
Yes.
point that Christopher, my teacher, Mr. Christopher Book, and they were so casual in Cambridge, like, oh yeah, first names, and I'm like, but you're my professor. He would always make sure to walk
Yeah.
on the outside, and he said it was so that, if the carriages and something came out and splashed you, the
Right.
man would take it, and the woman wouldn't get have her dress ruined, right? So
Yeah. That's lovely.
we used to, you ladies, you're missing out.
Yes.
You used to be
Oh, you're so
queens,
missing out.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to continue with this, but I want to inject one story I have. And I told you this yesterday, I think. So I was out with friends once about 20 years ago, and another gentleman came that he had been invited to join the group, and it was just at a restaurant or something. And he sat down with us, and after a few minutes, I had to get up and go to the ladies' room. and I stood up to leave. This man stood up. He was 30 years old. He stood up as I stood up. And it took me a couple seconds to figure out what was going on. And I was flabbergasted. He was standing up for me because
Wow.
that's what gentlemen do when a
Yep.
lady gets up from the table. They stand up until she leaves and then they sit down. When she comes back, they stand up again until she sits down and then they sit down again. I was flabbergasted. I have never forgot that. That was impressive. Gentlemen, that is impressive. Do that for a lady. They won't forget it. I didn't. Okay.
This
So,
this this book is actually very helpful, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about the book after we give you some more examples. But maybe
okay.
we should have a dinner party. So we oh no, we were still in the room with the couches. Okay, carry on.
Yes. If you meet full with a person of quality in the streets, you must run presently towards the channel. And they're talking about water. I think this they're talking about they must be talking about
Gutter.
London.
No, maybe that's
Oh, is that what it is? Okay. Oh, you're right. I think it is the channel. Okay, you must run presently toward the channel, or post yourself so as he may pass by with his left hand towards you and his right hand free. And the same rule is to be observed with the coaches. If it be a lady of quality, you cannot address yourself to her with respect unless it be vouchsafed to advance and tender her cheek. And in that cafe, too, you are only to pretend to salute her by putting your head to her hoods. So I guess that
salute
just
is
means,
kiss.
yeah, kiss. So you're just supposed to touch her hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the funny part. But whether you kiss her or not, when you retreat, you must make a profound reverence with your body, which I think means to bow.
Mm.
If there be other ladies in the room and they have equal condition and independent upon the lady you saluted, you may salute them too. But if they be inferior and depending in any wise, you are obliged to forbear. It would be a rudeness to the lady to treat them at the same rate. So you may salute a lady of rank and you may salute a lady of equal rank. You may not salute her servant because that will be an insult to the lady.
Mm.
I think that's what that means. And so our ears heard this and go, wait a minute, I thought you're supposed to treat all ladies like ladies. And in fact, we say lady here.
Right.
It's so silly. If you watch YouTube videos or news where people are being interviewed about something just absolutely horrible that happened, and the criminal perpetrator is referred to as the gentleman, not by
Yes.
the police. They just This is by people being interviewed. Oh, so this gentleman over here pulled a gun on that gentleman over there. It's like he's not a gentleman. But this lady over here was, turning tricks on the street. It's like she's not a lady, right? But we use that for everybody. It's just that's I think a very American thing where you would just assume somebody's a lady or a gentleman, even under the most absurd circumstances, which would tell you they are not. You would still
Well,
refer to them
because we
as
don't
lady or
have
gentleman.
any, right? That's what we established.
Maybe, or maybe it was a bit socialist that way.
Well, no, it's just it's the the rejection, the absolute rejection of title, right? So technically, we have no lords and ladies,
No, we don't.
right?
But it's assumed that you're a person of quality, you're a lady or a gentleman, right? In
Well,
in
but
America,
so
that's what
this
I
is
think.
yeah. Well, I think I mean we've lost you. I think you made an excellent case for the children need to be be considered different from the adults so that they're safe from both directions, right?
Yes,
But that's all of the other distinctions that we make. I get why men who are being old fashioned and call each other sir all the time, and I'm like, but you're not all sir.
well, yeah, even young people do too. I still do that myself. I don't know if somebody says excuse me, miss, or even if it's an old lady, or sometimes they'll say ma'am. I'll say excuse me, sir. And young
Mm,
people will do this too if they don't know your name.
right.
Not just a Southern thing either. I've seen it all
That's
over the
fair.
United
Okay.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but these are so this is the what our book is describing is actual distinctions of status, whereas Americans tend
Yes.
to be constantly a if you're being polite in situations, you're usually change. It's the same status being reversed, right? It's like sir, 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 right?
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, that's appropriate for friends, but friends are the ones that can do that, right? And but the problem is, in most other social situations, there's not that ability to exchange status, and it makes people
Mm.
uncomfortable and confused. And in fact, I mean, it's like everybody who grew up in the South
Yeah.
and understands these differences is way happier. It's
Yeah.
right. My perspective, right? Because you're not desperately trying to like reestablish your status every single time you go into an interaction. You recognize it. You know it. There's clues, right? And
Hmm.
it's actually respectful not to try to lower yourself above below someone who you in fact have higher status than, right?
Yes. Yeah. Whereas in other areas of the country, people might accuse you of, you're putting on airs,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
In which,
The
in
South
this
tends to
movie,
carry on more with these civility codes than other places.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I live in an area of the South where a lot of Northeasterners have moved in. And, I come from those people myself. A lot of them are very nice people. But the difference and the way they interact on a daily basis is stark, right? The
Right.
Southerners will speak more slowly. They'll take more time to talk to you, and they expect you to take time to talk to them. It's polite.
Right.
Northerners talk very fast. They're all business. They move very fast, and it's just a very big difference. They're not doing it to be rude. That's just a cultural difference that you can see.
Well, the thing is, I think there may be like a direct line from this book to the Southern because apparently this book was very popular in Restoration England, and
Oh, okay.
so it's published in 1671 in English, also German, French, and Latin, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it becomes the standard book
Hmm.
for. The thing is, I'm not sure the nobility read these books. I think
They don't, but you know who would be the Virginia planters, right?
right,
Because they were trying to
right,
copy the
exactly.
nobility that they lost
George
out on because they were
Washington
second sons.
apparently had. I mean, I don't think he was reading this one, but he was reading some of the other ones, and he's like, yeah, they're
Yes,
making out books on how to behave, and they're trying to
yes,
do this. Yes,
yes. It was a big deal in Virginia. They were very formal, and I think some of their parts of their society probably still are. If I had to take a guess.
I felt yes. I guess while I was in North Carolina, for a fellowship, and they were behaving Southern, but not in a way that I recognized from Texas, right?
Hmm.
There's an older colonial
Yes,
civility. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, and the South continued to have more contacts with England or Britain for longer.
They had a lot of contacts. The planters would send their children to school in England, especially their girls,
Right,
right? Right.
right.
And they learned a lot of their manners there and brought them here because they were the ones putting on the parties for society.
Ooh, and there'll be dinner parties. Okay, so we've established that greeting is everything, right? And
Yes, reading is very important.
if you miss out on the greeting, you're doomed. Okay, you can't recover from this mistake. What's next?
Dining,
Dining.
dining.
Oh,
This
I
is
got the
some
we got.
some of these.
Here is dining. Here's the table.
Right. This isn't the complete chapter either. I just took some excerpts out of it, but these ones are kind of funny because you will all recognize at least one of them. Okay. When you're at table, you must lie upright and not loll up on your elbows.
Don't put your elbows on the table. Now you know why. It says so in the book.
Yeah. You must not by any awkward gesture show any signs that you are hungry, nor fix your eyes upon the meat as if you would devour all. When you are carved by anyone, you must take it uncovered and refuse nothing that is given you. It is not civil to call for anything you like, especially if it be of a dainty. I think that means like a pastry or sweet.
Hmm.
Nor is it better when you are offered your choice of things that are good to lay hands upon the better. It is not manners, as soon as you are set at the table, to bawl out, I eat none of this, I eat none of that, I care for no rabbit, I love nothing with pepper, nutmeg, onions, etc. Those are but imaginary aversions.
Do you know
Those are
how
but imaginary.
irritating I find it when people like go on and on and on about how what they can and
Yeah,
can't eat? It's like just
yeah,
shh,
yeah. Shut up. Yeah,
shut up.
those are but imaginary aversions, easily corrected in youth. It is
Eat your
it is
peas.
that it is better, therefore, to restrain or at least conceal these repugnancies as much as we can, and to take all that is offered. If our disgust be invincible, we may let it lie upon our plate, eat something else, and when we see our opportunity, give that away that we did not like.
Don't feed it to the dog.
Feed it to the dog. That's what I thought. But under the table, here, Bruce. Yeah.
Why is the dog so fat?
So what's funny about this, besides the obvious, we've all already these table manners are still in play in grandma's house and probably your mother's house if you were raised right, right? is that, well, if you don't like it, just hide it, just pretend you do, and then get rid of it really quickly. So you're protecting the feelings of the person who presented you the food. You're never to let them know that you don't like what you put in front of you, to eat everything that's put in front of you. And if you can't get past that, then at the earliest convenience where it's not obvious to the host or hostess, then you can kind of try to get rid of it. Don't put it in the plant.
So I
They'll
just
find it
have
later.
the flash of, the only people that seem still to believe in this rule are, old school anthropologists, or
Which will,
Indiana Jones, right? If you're thinking of in the Temple of Doom, when they're at the dinner party, and
oh, you can't refuse
you
it.
can't
Yeah.
refuse, you're insulting.
Oh no, I was raised like this, and like you say, a common as muck, but I was still raised the same way. If people offer you food, you take it.
Right.
You eat. If they have, you know, given you a place at their table and are sharing their food with you, then you eat it and you don't complain about it. That's still common. I think that's still pretty common. At least I hope it is.
Well, I think
Maybe I don't get out
it's
enough.
relatively rare for people to have meals in people's homes now,
Oh, that's a shame.
right?
Well, you're invited to my home anytime.
Well, thank you. But no, I mean, it's just, I don't think, I mean, I've had periods in my life, I know, when, like me and my friends were, trying to back in high school, we tried to have like a fancy grown-up dinner once
Have
at my
fun.
mom's. We cooked them. It was at my mom's house, right? And it's like we were really wanting to perform this sort of,
Hmm.
dining, right? Isn't it? And I think now restaurants, if you go to a nice, go to a nice restaurant, you are expected to pretend that you know what these
Oh gosh,
customs are.
I went to a restaurant with a friend once, and they weren't quite open for lunch yet. I mean, really by a half an hour. But they said, "But we have tea if you'd like to sit and have tea,
Mm.
a cup of tea." And we're both tea drinkers. Oh, sure, I love a cup of tea, right? They brought a whole service
Oh,
out,
yes.
and I
The
had never
tea.
seen that before. I was an adult, and I had never seen a full tea service before, with like a pot with water, and then you have warm cups, and then you have a separate pot with the tea in it, and then you
Mm.
have little sugar cubes, and then you have a spoon, which is contains, it can hold a lot of sugar, and tongs. I it was impressive, and I embarrassed myself, and I'm glad nobody else was in the restaurant to see me put too much sugar in my tea, because I didn't know how to use their tea implements
Well, so interestingly,
properly.
I'm thinking about all this and saying that I mean, one, Europeans and their heirs used to know how to behave, and a lot of these like formal behaviors now, when people see them, like, the West has decided, like, we don't need to know how to behave anymore, and it's like the '60s, we're all gonna wear jeans, and
No.
I was when we were talking about this a little earlier, that I have my students call me professor because I think it's a courtesy, right? We're
It
in
is
this
courtesy,
relationship. I teach
but
you.
you've earned it too. You've earned the title. This is what's different from nobility. Nobility inherited it. You earned it, and I think Americans are really, I think they're really attuned to that, or at
Except
least they
for in
should be.
academia now, they're not, right? They all, it's like, well, at least the people a little older than me, they went through, the great leveling of the '60s, right? And we're all going to be,
Hmm.
like you said with the kids, right? That they're not, you just call me by
Yeah.
my first name, and professors have them, the people that are their students say, oh, well, we're all being, but then I had my teacher in Cambridge having me call him Christopher, because that was the custom there, that everybody would on this first name basis thing, which confused me, because, but you're
Yeah,
my
it's
teacher,
confusing.
you know.
Yeah. 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 When I was young and first started working, everybody was calling everyone else by their first names. I did not want to do this. These
Yeah.
people I worked with were older than my parents. I did not want to do that. It was really hard to get
Right.
past that. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've gone, modern culture has gone through a lot of things, and a lot of it, we are now pointing out, has simply been to the loss of these manners. Be all stuffy and,
Mhm.
stuff like that. But then they'll look to other cultures, like the tea ceremony in Japan. I rather
Mhm.
think that, I was thinking this, this may be apocryphal, but I think it's true, that all the bowing that they do in Japan now, they picked up from wanting to behave like Europeans. I think
Really?
yeah, I don't think it was, there's all these, certainly I do know this for a fact, that the reason that we think of samurai as sort of mystical and chivalrous is because in the 19th century, when Japan opens up to the West and many Japanese come, particularly to England, to study, and at that point, England is going through its like social reconfiguration, which
Hmm.
we may need to talk about in a different episode. And they're very interested in chivalry, and this man Nitobe goes home and writes his book on Bushido to prove that Japan has its own chivalric tradition, which is the
Interesting.
samurai. And so now coming back this way, oh well, the samurai, they had all these codes of honors and stuff like that. And it's like, to a certain extent, yes, but in
Yeah,
fact, their sense of themselves as chivalrous comes from Nitobe trying to show them that they should be, just as in the 19th century, they're, you know, it's the sort of pre-Raphaelite reimagining of the world that was lost and
that's very
stuff like that.
interesting.
But it's all reflecting out, right? And I
That is
think
very
I
interesting in
think
Japan
the
because Japan.
bowing and stuff, it's like they're doing it because they learn it from the way that the Europeans are behaving in the 19th century. They take it back to Japan. They kept it. They're still wearing the suits, for
Yeah.
goodness sake,
Well, they're
right?
fascinated with European and Western
Right.
culture.
Right.
I had no idea it started in the 19th century, or sorry, yeah, 19th century.
They're
I
closed.
thought it
Japan closes itself off to European
right.
contact for a few hundred years.
So that probably piqued their curiosity even more,
Right.
right?
So after
Yeah.
1868 and the Meiji Restoration,
Mhm.
the shogunate is thrown out and the emperor comes back, and they come over to the West to study, and they take back all of these practices. I think some of these, like how formally you behave. What they did was say, oh, they behave this way. They're in London. We need to behave this way, and
Interesting.
they've kept it, and intensified it, just like the way they play classical music better than we do. Right? They're playing the European music of that court culture.
Hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking about curtsying rather than bowing as was women curtsy. The only time I've ever done that is when you're performing ballet when I was a child. That was it.
Yeah, I couldn't
When you're
even
doing a
see this.
formal dance.
I've been taught none of this stuff. The only thing I have is the Mr. and Mrs. gestures of address, right?
Mm. Well, that's the only place the formal things like that are done are during dances, right?
Hmm. See, we do keep telling you guys you need to go to learn to dance. Okay, so
I have more
here's a
examples.
ballroom. We have the ballroom. Was that all in the food?
That was all in the food.
Okay,
Yeah. Next is dancing.
dancing.
Mhm. So dancing. If the king or queen dances, all the company is to stand and be uncovered unless those whose function exempts them. I guess that means servants.
Mm.
If the king or queen be at the ball, you are not to take the ladies out nor return them to their places, but you are with a low conge. I don't know what that word means. To invite them, not when you have done, having paid them the same reverence, you may let them pass alone to their seats. You must not pass before their majesties, but with a profound reverence, unless you be dancing. So you're allowed to dance in front of
Mm.
them. But if not, you have to bow every time you come near them. It's almost reminded me of like every time you pass the tabernacle in the Catholic Church, you're supposed to genuflect, right? That's the king.
That's the
You bow
king.
before the
Yeah,
king,
yeah.
right? You must not take anyone's place or seat that is dancing. No nicking someone's seat, guys. And it is ridiculous to imitate any man while he is dancing or whilst the music is playing to keep time and play the fool with your head, your hands, or your feet, right?
Okay,
Don't do
yeah,
that.
don't be bobbing. I mean,
Don't do that.
it's been interesting with the watching the minuet, right? It's like it's so like
So
restrained in this, and
restrained.
I was also understanding
You
why
feel the energy between the
Louis
man
the
and the
14th
woman.
loved showing his legs off, and man, the minuet shows your legs off for sure. That
Yes.
calf
Yeah.
work when you're doing the plies all the time.
Well, this is where he created the ballet too, right? The
Mm.
ballet school
And men
at the
in
same
heels
time.
so that they can do the minuet.
Yes. Okay, I said one more paragraph. Let's see. Yes.
Know
Okay,
that
last one.
these courtesies of dancing are of course still around in Southern
They
dancing.
are.
Yeah,
Well, and any kind of ballroom dancing also. Ballroom dancing is like that.
right.
Ballet at the end of a performance would be like that. So if you be among persons in masquerade, masked, 'tis uncivil to press anyone to discover himself or to lay hands upon his mask. You are rather
Don't be
obliged,
ripping them off.
yeah, you are rather obliged to be more civil to them than other people, because under those disguises you have many times persons of great quality. And I don't know what he means by quality. I'm really stuck on that word. Yeah, because I've heard people use that expression before. Oh, that's quality, man. That's real quality.
Well,
And it's always
it's in Tolkien,
sarcastic.
right? That's what Sam says to about
Oh, is
Faramir,
it?
right? It's like you shown your
Oh,
quality
okay.
in this station. It's like it's your nobility, but of course for Sam it's in his behavior rather than just in
Right.
being steward of Gondor.
Yeah. So that's all I have on the dancing. But yeah, it was very strict what you do and what you don't do in every situation in this book, whether it's dancing or grading or being in church. That was a fun one. We didn't go over.
We should compare it. Okay, so we should compare what he says because as you were saying that you can't cross in front of the majesties without reverence. Um,
Right.
I'm kind of wondering how much mass behavior is in fact from this now, right? Like the kneeling before the tabernacle and things like that. The cause
How
and
much mass behavior
the cause
is the
and
mass behavior?
the cause
Go
and
ahead.
effect of where it's coming from is curious, I'm thinking.
Yeah, was the chicken or the egg?
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm
Which
gonna.
came first?
Now that so the guys, a Rogue Wave says a gentleman could be an absolute scoundrel and still be a gentleman due to his rank. Yes, the gentleman is the noble man, right? Gentle being
Right.
this sort of nobility rather, and he could be
And
vicious.
again,
He
this
could be vicious and not virtuous, but still be a gentleman.
and again, this exists in the U.S. military, right? An officer and a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of their code of conduct. It says officer and a gentleman, right? You
Right.
have to be both, but it's assumed you're a gentleman, so you have to live up to that.
Right, but what Rogue Wave means is you can a gentleman was this rank. It's not
Right.
and I
Right.
think it's
So
what you were
they
worried
made the
about is whether
distinction.
quality is actually behavior or status. I think it's status, but the okay, so the
It's
curious,
got to be. Yeah.
yeah. And Robert says I'm super mean, but thanks, ladies, got to go. Bye. Thank you for saying. Thank you for
Thank you for your
saluting.
courtesy.
Thank you for the courtesy. Um, hopefully you'll watch it and you'll realize that we acknowledged you. Um, Okay, so all of this is really super fascinating, and we Casey does more research than I let her like show off. So we're here at Mar-a-Lago in the ballroom, but know that we Americans have been so, or at least the rich ones, have been so desperate for this kind of elegance and performance that there's a bunch of them. So here's one. I think this is
Mhm.
Asheville. You're saying
Yeah, the
it looks like
Biltmore.
a chateau.
It does. It's made to look like a French chateau.
It
That was
certainly does.
that was the summer residence, not full time. That was the summer residence of the Vanderbilt family.
Yeah, there are other ones in Rhode Island. Or no, yes,
Hmm.
Providence, right? The Breakers.
They have several. Yeah, well, all of the wealthy industrialists had summer homes up in Rhode Island too. There's a whole neighborhood of mansions up
The
there.
Newport mansions.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Newport mansions and a lot of the American castles. There used to be there was an American Castles PBS story
Mm.
about the heiresses who would marry into the British nobility and bring their money with them to help replenish their funds.
Hey,
That happened quite a
the
lot.
United States was really, really wealthy when we had tariffs, eh?
Just saying.
Just saying. I don't know why that would be on anybody's mind. Okay, so
The
here's
mystery.
Vanderbilt outside, and this is oh my gosh, that's like the wood vaulted dining room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a medieval hall by the looks of it. It's stunning. Yeah. That's the family dining room, and obviously it wasn't just for family, although they had a very large family. I think they still do,
Mm.
but that was meant to entertain.
Right.
And you can actually go. I haven't done this myself, but you can actually go to the Biltmore at Christmas. It's supposed to be beautiful. You have to pay a ticket to get in, but it's stunningly decorated, and the outside gardens are as well.
So this is what Norbert Elias shows, and we did. I think when we my favorite example of this the series of these things is the blowing your nose exercise. um,
The
that what Elias shows is he has these etiquette books from the Middle Ages through the 17th and 18th
Oh,
century, and things get the polish that we're imagining is a feature of the 17th century, right? It's sort of starting by the 16th century, but medieval table manners were, I mean, they're more than we think they are. They're not like, they had finger bowls and stuff like that,
yeah.
and they had to behave, but they're the sort of high point of this kind of formalism is the ancien regime. It's the 17th and 18th centuries, and
Mm,
so the yeah, it kind of goes both ways. Like medieval dining was both more and less polite than you've imagined it from the movies, but their medieval hall, I'm assuming people are expected to behave as if they're in the 17th century, not
yes. Yes.
not in the medieval. Okay, here we go. This is it looks like it's in California, more Spanish.
Yeah, that's the Hearst Castle.
Mm.
Yeah.
We
That's
have
it,
castles here. These are, I mean, so these are, the smaller ones got burned in the fire, right? Or the people wanted their
oh.
Palisades
Oh, the Palisades, right.
mansions. Yeah,
Yeah, those were more like mid-century modern things, but
right.
still sad. I feel bad for them.
But everybody, I mean, this is what Americans want to all have a castle, and
Oh, man's home is his castle.
some people have
Some
enough
cats
money to
have a real one.
have a real one. But then here, and
Yeah.
this is, I mean, inside the Hearst one, they like the medieval paneling too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots of dark, rich woods. That seems to be a feature of 1920s homes, even modest ones that I've seen that you could buy. Lot of them probably in Chicago. They used a lot of wood paneling back then because they were upper middle class. There was a lot of prosperity in the latter 19th century. Um,
tariffs. Don't even forget the
Tariffs,
tariffs.
that's right. And people used it, right? So they would have a much smaller scale version of that. But yeah, mahogany, oak paneling, that kind of thing was very popular at the time.
Yeah.
And of course, they had the money to go beautifully overboard on it. These castles.
Well, the dining halls that I know like this are all in universities, and so
Isn't that interesting? Because they
yeah,
wanted to look like a castle, right?
well, so I mean, ours, the University of Chicago, wanted to look like Oxford, and the
Okay.
the other, it's like this is it's interesting how the universities are and aren't the bastions of particular kinds of status. I mean, we certainly, I've signed up to process and graduation again because I love doing it because it's so ritual and so formal, and you get to be in the gowns and everything, and it really
It's
matters that
fun.
we perform something formally, right? In terms
Yes.
of this marking of significance of the work that the students have done and everything. And the I mean, C.S. Lewis said this, and I've said it before on the stream, I'm sure. Not being able to recognize the importance of ritual doesn't make you like cool. It makes you, not even barbarous, right? It just makes you dumb.
Sad.
Sad, pathetic,
Yeah.
and
Sad,
and
boring. Yeah. Or
and so
bored.
we've all, we've got modernity loved sneering at all of this performance, and certainly the French Revolution overthrew its practices of this civility, right? That's like here Courtine writes his book on how to behave at court, and it's associated with Versailles, and it's associated with all of this magnificent wealth, and it's associated with all of this privilege and status and such. And so the Enlightenment threw it all out. And it's like it's this specifically that the Enlightenment threw out. The medieval is kind of back projected onto some other things, but this particular kind of behavior has been
Yes,
rejected
you
by
don't. Yes.
modernity.
The gas enlightenment. Yeah.
The gas enlightenment.
Yeah. Gaslighted.
Oh,
Yeah. Into thinking that
the
it was
gas,
all
yes. So here we have
pretentious and
this one has it on water, and it looks like it has a big swimming pool in the front. No,
a big.
no, it's like some kind of,
Is that Vizcaya in Miami?
maybe
Yeah.
it looks Floridian, maybe.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
it?
Florida. That would be Vizcaya, and that was another industrialist that built his palace in Sarasota. Is
Mm,
it Sarasota? No, I'm sorry. Vizcaya's in Miami. What am I talking about? Coconut Grove. And it was all jungle when he built it, but he built it to resemble, I think, Venice.
mm. Okay.
in a Venetian castle where you would see it as
Oh, as you come up the
you
water.
piloted
And
your
so is
boat.
this the
Yeah.
interior? This white marble is the interior there?
Yes. I'm
Yes,
hoping
that
I'm
looks
thinking the right
Italian-y.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. And he probably imported Italian craftsmen to do it
Mm.
too, along with the materials,
I mean, think of
if I had to
think of the
guess.
dignity of the workmen that are able to make this kind of beauty.
Yes. They were in demand. They were in demand. There were a lot of people who had a lot of money that could
Skilled
pay them.
craftsmen to be able to do
Hmm.
this. And then here when in Cantius they built their own church. The craftsmen built their own church for them their own parish, which is what we show you every time we start, right? That
Yes.
altar was built by the craftsmen for themselves.
Yeah. It's
If you
beautiful.
have those kinds of skills, you can make beauty
Hmm.
for your community, not just for the super wealthy, but
Yeah, I
for
don't get people who think that beauty is a distraction and that everything should be plain and that manners are just, an unnecessary, additional burden to people. It's not ever it's something anybody could ever enjoy at all for any reason. They've blanded life.
yeah.
They've certainly blanded our churches.
Well, here we have the king as Johnny Depp is the king, and what they're doing at
Oh, I
church.
love this. Okay, this is Jean du Barry, who was, I guess, a mistress of King Louis the 15th.
Mm.
And this is a movie that came out last year. I've not seen yet, but I did see this scene and I was really happy to find a picture of it. And so she is meeting him for the first time. She's being introduced to him and she's very interested in him. She very much wants to be his mistress, but she has to abide by etiquette,
Mm.
right? And so as she's being walked in, she says, now do not, the lady with her says, do not look the king directly in the eyes because it's considered basically crude, like you're sexually available to him, right? Don't do that. That would be very crude if you've never met him before, right? And so she comes in to meet him, puts a big broad smile on her face, looks him right
Right
in
in
the
the
eye
eye.
she's as she's curtsying, and he gets this wry little smirky smile on his face, like, okay, all right.
Right, but the
It
thing
was
is,
really
none of this.
scandalous because the whole room just went when she did
Right.
that. You know.
But the point, I mean, the point about all this is okay. So one, they set it up in the movie so that say don't do this, so she does, right? And
Yeah.
that thinking of all of the things we've lost because we don't have this level of formality, right? We've lost all of the frisson. I mean, this is like the sort of
Yeah.
we're going to over and over and over and over disrupt all social courtesy so completely that children can't tell whether or not they're being groomed because
Right.
they've been told that grown-ups are just like you, right? um
Right.
this the irony of it being, of course, that the frisson of her, it's like it's so sexy she just looked at him, right?
Yeah.
Looking at him
Right.
straight in the eye
Looked
is
him
the most
right in the
like
eye.
transgressive thing she can possibly do, but there's nothing to transgress if you have none of these
Yeah.
structures in place at all.
Yeah, there's nothing exciting or even constraint as we saw in the minuet performed in the
Right.
videos that we were studying. It was exciting because there was such restraint and you could tell
Mm-hmm.
the tension between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't want there to be restraint, but they kind of did at the same time because they were in public and they were able to dance publicly together. But it was kind of electric watching them.
Right.
Just
Well,
because like the scene in the movie, it's the exchange of their glances. That's all you needed to see.
so the layers of irony in all of this that we are sadly um missing in our culture.
It is sad. It makes life less interesting, not more interesting. When you have no barriers whatsoever, no barriers of etiquette or social convention. It's just everybody's gonna put on their dark gray drab unisex blousy uniforms like Maoist China and just kind of drudge on with their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite bland.
Well, this is, I mean, directly as you're describing that, I hadn't thought of it that what the communist, what one, obviously the communist claims to making everybody slaves, but whatever. But the sort of like this what the what everybody is complaining about on all levels is this, this horrible, the slop sameness of the lack
Yes.
of distinctions and such. That I mean, fundamentally, the primary thing we've lost is our manners, our civility, and
Hmm.
this is the real, delightful clincher and irony in all of this. This is what people meant to behave like a Christian, because and you slipped, you let out. It's like you're trying to get these backstory. Corton, when he's writing this, is using, among other things, a Jesuit manual
That's right.
of behavior, right? And there's
Yeah.
there's also there's a further one in the background, which is a Venetian handbook called Galateo, which I
Mhm.
just found that this evening. We started looking Corton up yesterday, and then Galateo is actually really, really important, because everybody in Europe, and this was another like sort of fun tweak on what we're doing in our plot right now, that it's masked, so we're thinking it's carnival, so it's like in Venice.
Mhm.
Galateo was originally published in Venice by Della Casa,
Mhm. Perfect.
became the handbook for all of Europe, right? If you're missing what it used to be like in the sort of cool frisson times, you're missing A, Venetian manners, and B, Christian manners. And this is
Mhm.
when we talked a bit ago about LaSalle and his education for Christian children, right? This is what they meant, right? To behave like a Christian meant to behave in this. And the irony of it, I was thinking when we started talking at the beginning about Christ saying, don't take your place and such like that, and don't put yourself above and such. This is Christian behavior, right? It's the
Mhm.
sort of appropriate respect for all. I mean, I think what Corten is showing is respect, right? You're respecting people in their appropriate position with relation to you, but you have to know who they are. You have to pay proper attention to them to be able to know how to respond to them
Right.
correctly.
Mhm.
I mean, this is what people used to mean to behave like a Christian. It wasn't about being nice. It was
Right. It was about putting other people at ease.
it was it was
Right. There was a sweet movie that came out of Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone about 20 years ago. It was called Blast from the Past. And it's his parents, it was 1959 or 1960, had his father was brilliant, like physicist or something like that, and he had built this amazing, expansive bunker underneath their house in case of a nuclear war.
mm,
And there was a plane crash, and they were down in the vault just checking it out because he had just finished it. And there was a plane crash, and of course the sensors went off, and he thought, oh my gosh, the bomb's hit, because it was like an earthquake. So he shuts it all off. His wife is pregnant,
mm.
right? So she has the baby in the bunker, and he says it's not going to open up for 30
Oh
years.
man,
And so when he emerges in Los Angeles 30 years later, says you need to go out and get supplies. It should be safe enough to go outside now. The radiation should be down.
right.
Right? And Brendan Fraser emerges to go on his errands, to check out what Los Angeles is like now, and he's got the manners of somebody from 1959, and they're beautiful. He treats women with respect, and Alicia Silverstone meets him. She doesn't understand at all why he's acting like, why are you acting better than everybody,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
And her friend says he's not acting better than you. He's just trying to put you at ease. That's why he's doing this. I thought so too, and I asked him why do you do these things, and he says, well, because it puts people at ease, right? And he was doing everything his father taught him to. The contrast was just really lovely to see.
what's that called
Yeah,
again?
Blast from the Past.
Oh.
It's a fun movie. Yeah.
So does he keep his manners throughout the story?
He keeps them, and the woman, his love interest, comes to understand why he's doing it, and it's not because he's trying to act better than everybody else, that he thinks he's better. It's that he's just really kind.
Mm-hmm.
He's being kind to other people, and trying to remember their names is a kindness, right? Opening a door for you is a kindness. It's not treating you like you don't know how to open a door. It's just being kind.
Right. So I found the Galateo, which is interesting. It has at the end of it, he has a number of valuable hints or concise lessons worth the attention of young persons. And this also looks like it was published as a little pamphlet-y thing. So this is the book you learn. Show in everything a modesty. Be not always speaking of yourself. Be not awkward in manner. Be not bashful. Be not forward. Talk not of yourself at all. Boast not. Angle not for praise. Avoid lying. Don't equivocate. Confess your faults. Tell no lies called innocent. Avoid vain boasting. On all occasions, keep up good breeding. Be easy in carriage, I mean, like in your movement, right? Listen when spoken to. Vary your address. Behave well at table. Attend to the women. Kiss not the ladies.
Kiss not the ladies.
This is, I mean, so these are all things like how to be a as a man, right?
Hmm.
Um, there's also some practice. Affect not absence of mind. Learn a knowledge of the world. Flatter delicately. Study the foibles of men. Observe certain times of applying to these foibles. Judge of other men by yourself. Command your temper and countenance. Seem friendly to enemies. Okay, so again, this is the Galateo, so it's the 16th century Venetian one that's behind a lot of these 17th
Hmm.
century courtesies. Doubt him who swears to the truth of a thing. Make no riotous attachments. But the first thing I saw there's also a study the dignity of matters. So be not envious. Be not passively complacent. Show no hastiness of temper. Be mild to your servants. Keep up outward appearances. To be well received, there are rules for conversation. Talk not long together. Tell no stories. I think it means not gossip, right? Use no
Hmm.
hackneyed expressions. Make no digressions. Hold no one by the button when talking. I mean, to grab, grab him by the.
Yeah.
Punch no one in conversation.
Always good
Always
advice.
good advice, right? Attend to the person speaking to you. Be not morose or surly, right? Okay. For women, right? Instructions particularly adapted to young women. Pride yourself in modesty. Never be afraid of blushing. Don't talk loud. Refrain from talking much. Don't even hear a double entendre.
Oh.
Avoid lightness of carriage. Be discreet. Affect no languishing. Oh, affect no languishing. That's pretty funny. Dare to be prudish. Be not too free. Be cautious in dancing. Dread becoming cheap. Be not too often seen in public. If you go to a play, let it be a tragedy. Avoid gaming. Be modest and moderate in dress. Shun the idea of a vain woman. And it keeps going, right?
Hmm. It must be a tragedy, not a
It
comedy.
must
Is
be.
that because it's indecorous to laugh out
I
loud?
think so. Yeah.
Oh.
Um, the same one Curtin who you were working from. He also wrote a book that I'm now very curious. I found a PDF of it on the book is called A Treatise of Jealousy or Means to Preserve Peace in Marriage.
Okay, I want to read
Wherein
that one.
wherein is treated of the nature and effects of jealousy, which for the most part is the fatal cause of discontents between man and wife. This was published in 1684. I think we need to like go back in the past a bit. And because jealousy is a passion, it's therefore occasionally discoursed of passions in general, so you have to understanding of emotions, right? The reciprocal
Mm.
duties of man and wife with infallible means to preserve peace in the family by avoiding dissensions that may arise from jealousy or any other cause whatsoever. Written in French and faithfully translated. These were Catholic.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, I think among other things, these are Catholic manners.
Well, how wonderful it is that the people at this time that it wasn't just, oh, you're married now, you're on your own. Good luck.
Oh, right.
Right? They
Yes.
actually tried to help them. They actually tried to help
Yes.
them by writing these books and passing them around, passing this knowledge around.
Well, Curtin did, right? And I'm interested of the marriage of Christian. Well, anyway, the when we're talking about all of the things that we've lost of our culture and our civilization, the civility, right? That's what I wanted you to like land a little harder. Read the title again of
Mhm.
his book.
Okay. The title is The Rules of Civility, or Certain Ways of Deportment Observed in France Among All Persons of Quality upon Several Occasions. So, how to be civil on
Civility,
any occasion. Yeah.
civility, civilized. I mean, this is what people meant. It's like, can we be civilized when they're comparing themselves to barbarous? They mean, do you know how to behave?
Yeah. Yeah. Were you
And
raised in a barn?
well, you're raised in a barn. but also,
Yeah.
you know, just like and what I like the way you're describing what the Brendan Fraser character is doing. It's like this is how you are courteous, and courteous in the sense of not rude and uppity, but and I think it seems to me that Trump actually is. I think he must have been raised well, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You
he
can see
knows how to
that.
do it
Yeah.
when he's you know on stage and in you know comedic mode, but he's very polite to
Yes.
people that he meets in person.
Mhm. He was polite to Kamala Harris after their
Hmm.
debate, and I thought she acted awfully during that debate. But he was still like, "You did very well. Yeah, good
Yeah,
job." You know, he was very kind to her. It's a kindness. Courtesy is a kindness to another person.
right. And a respect. And
Hmm.
interestingly, distinctions of rank are also a matter of respect
Yes.
and refusal to acknowledge the fact that I mean, what we were skidding at the beginning of how we fall into envy otherwise. And therefore, I'm interested
Hmm.
that Curtin's book on maintaining peace in marriage is about jealousy, right? It's like
Hmm.
these are all of these courtesies are ways that you are I think in fact it's like okay, so one, if we don't do this, we end up in the next thing we could have been talking about was duels, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Curtin also wrote about that, right? About honor. Um, that if you break the rules of courtesy and dishonor, it's disruptive and terrible. And they, you know, the men would,
Hmm.
you know, illegally joust and duel and things like that. But the that we are so careless now of people's respect that I see this over and over and over again from my southern trained perspective. Yes, ma'am. That is my primary sense of what we've lost. All of the stuff about what culture is and what our political behavior and stuff. We don't know how to behave fundamentally, and that's why we
Right.
can't recover what we feel like we've lost, which is how to
And yeah.
behave well with
And
each
that's
other.
why our congressmen and women in particular
Right.
are acting as badly as they are during their sessions.
Yes.
People get shocked. It looks like the Jerry Springer show sometimes, the way the people yell at each other back and forth and the insults that fly. Well, yeah, that's the way people. It's the way their constituents are acting, right?
Right.
It's the way the larger culture is acting, and that needs to change.
And if your mother didn't teach you, who's going to teach you? Where are we going to learn this?
Make etiquette schools great again. They do
Make
exist.
etiquette
They still
schools
exist.
great again. There you go. And the thing is, I think it's interesting that Trump bought this beautiful house, and
Mhm.
he always wears his suit. He always behaves respectfully. Everything that he's done through, like even serving at the McDonald's to you know
The football
the
players.
football
Yeah.
players. You see he's playing out. He's carrying that house with him
Yes.
into all of his interactions, so that
Yes.
and we recognize it, and that's what people are responding to.
Mhm.
Well, good. And now we're still worried about how to write this scene, right? And the
It's
dance.
gonna be
We'll
fun.
we'll tell we need everyone needs to learn. I'm not sure I could dance the minuet with my. I hurt my knee doing Pilates the other week, and I can't.
No,
I'm walking around with a cane.
I,
We
yeah.
would all be in better shape if we were dancing the minuet.
I
That's
would
for
love to
sure.
dance. I can't get my husband to dance. Go dance less. He's not going to do it. So.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. The place where some of this still survives. It's like in the minuet. I know I have done the minuet, but not as a minuet. It's square dancing.
Square dancing,
It's
yes.
square
Square
dancing, ladies.
quadrilles, right?
It's
Cotillions are
absolutely so
dances.
that's the place
Yeah.
we can all start. Start with square dancing. You bow. The men get to wear heels because they're boots. Women get to wear skirts and
Yeah.
turn and it's I mean the minuet was all like the hand to hand turns and square dancing at
Hmm.
your elbows, but
Square,
it's the same. We
well,
can
I learned.
recover
Yeah.
this.
Well, the Virginia reel, you actually do go hand to hand, so
Oh, very
it's
good.
not the elbow.
Okay. So now we know what we need to look for. But what we need to, if we want to recover our civilization, we need to recover our civility.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And really need to like figure out a sign off when we finish here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Mel says, so many layers of clothing. I don't know what she's talking about. Bye. We'll be here. We'll be here next week with more lessons in how to behave. Good night.